Are you an employee or are you an independent contractor? That might sound like a pretty simple question, but believe me, getting the answer wrong is one of the most significant and costly mistakes you can make in the world of tax and labor law. Let's break down exactly why that is.
Welcome. In this explainer, we are going to get into the weeds of this really critical distinction. Figuring out if someone is an employee or a contractor has huge legal and financial consequences for absolutely everyone involved, and honestly, the stakes are probably a lot higher than you think. So let's start right there. Just how high are the stakes? You see, misclassifying a worker isn't just some small paperwork error. No, it's a massive mistake that can have some really profound and, frankly, expensive consequences for any business out there. I mean, if a business gets this wrong, they can suddenly find themselves on the hook for years of unpaid payroll taxes. We're talking about the employer's share of Social Security and Medicare, unemployment insurance, and all the income tax that should have been withheld. And on top of that, the penalties and interest can be absolutely staggering.
And this really brings us to a core principle here. Tax authorities, the courts, they really don't care what you call the relationship. You can have a contract that screams independent contractor all day long, but it's basically worthless if the reality of the working situation looks more like an employer-employee dynamic. They will always look at the substance over the form.
So if the contract isn't the be-all and end-all, then how do authorities figure this out? What exactly are they looking at to get to the truth of the relationship? Well, let's dive into the framework they use. The very first thing to get your head around is that there's no magic formula here. It's not a simple checklist where you tick a few boxes and you're done. No, it's a holistic evaluation. They look at the entire picture of the relationship, and some factors might weigh more heavily than others depending on the job. So, generally speaking, the whole analysis gets broken down into three main categories. We're looking at behavioral control, financial control, and the nature of the relationship itself. Together, these three things are designed to measure just how much control a company has versus how much independence the worker has. All right, first up, behavioral control. And the key word here is the right to control. It doesn't even matter if the company exercises that right. The question is, can the business tell the worker how to do the job? Things like setting specific work hours, telling them what software to use, or giving detailed step-by-step instructions, all of those point towards an employee relationship. Next, we look at financial control. And this is really all about the economic reality of the job. You got to follow the money. Who's in a position to make a profit or maybe suffer a loss? See, an independent contractor, they usually invest in their own tools, they don't get reimbursed for expenses, and they're often paid a flat fee for a project. An employee, on the other hand, they're typically getting a regular salary and the company is footing the bill for tools and expenses. And finally, what's the nature of the relationship itself? Is this meant to be a permanent, ongoing thing, or is it for just one specific project? And of course, things like offering benefits, health insurance, a pension plan, paid vacation, that's almost always a dead giveaway that you're looking at an employee relationship. Okay, so now that we've got those three big categories of control, let's actually put them into practice. Honestly, seeing a side-by-side comparison is one of the best ways to make this whole distinction really click. When you boil it all down, the real difference is about integration versus independence. An employee is an integrated part of the business, right? They're following instructions, using company tools. A contractor, though, is running their own separate business, controlling their own methods, and providing their own gear to get the job done for the company. Let's make this crystal clear with an example. Let's take a graphic designer, we'll call her Sarah, and put her in two different scenarios. In scenario A, her manager sets her hours, assigns her specific tasks, and gives her a company computer. She is clearly an employee. But in scenario B, she sets her own hours, works from her own studio with her own high-end equipment, and she invoices the company for each project. Here, she's showing all the classic signs of an independent contractor. See the difference? So we've covered the how of classification. Now let's get to the so what. I mean, what are the real-world consequences that directly hit the finances of both the business and the worker? This is where it gets really interesting. As you can see, the financial responsibilities are just worlds apart. For an employee, the employer's handling tax withholding, paying half of the Social Security and Medicare taxes, but for a contractor, that entire burden, paying estimated taxes, covering both halves of Social Security and Medicare, and finding their own benefits, it all shifts directly onto their shoulders. And the tax implications here are pretty stark. Contractors have to pay what's called self-employment tax, which is basically double the Social Security and Medicare tax an employee pays. Why? Because the contractor is on the hook for both the employees and the employer's share. That is a critical piece of math for any contractor to factor into their rates. So all of this brings us right back to our central theme. You have to look beyond the label on a piece of paper. The true relationship is found in the actual, underlying facts of the work itself.
So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The day-to-day reality of who actually controls the work and who is bearing the financial risk, that is what truly defines your status. Your contract might call you an independent contractor, but does the reality of your work tell a different story?
I'll leave you with that question to think about. Because getting that classification right isn't just about paperwork, it's absolutely fundamental to legal compliance and sound financial management for everybody involved. Whether you're a business owner bringing on new talent or a professional providing your services, understanding this distinction is absolutely 100% critical.